Okay, we've got a new Fusion part file here, and I'm going to do the walkthrough shown in the slides here. Just walking through a simple Fusion part design using a couple different features that you are going to be likely to use throughout Fusion. So this is going to be done in class, or likely to be done in class so that you can follow along directly. But in case you want to access this again or practice some more, I'm also recording it. So we're going to be making this. Let's get started. Just jump right into it. The first thing that we need to do is we are going to create a sketch. I'm going to do this on the YZ plane because if you look here at what we're trying to make, I'm going to first make this part so that I can, just turn it into a rectangle and then add the features part later. So since I just want to make like this rectangle with a circle on it, and then extrude it along this line here, I'm just going to make it on the YZ plane so that it's kind of upward, right? There's plenty of other ways that you can do this, but let's start here. So here we go. We've got our two-dimensional environment. First thing I'm going to do is I need to create a 2-point rectangle that is 3.5 inches by 1.5 inches. Now, it's very important that you start at the origin because Fusion hates everything that isn't by the origin. So you need to make sure that any sketches that you create are either defined in relation to the origin or just start at it, including it in some way. So let's go ahead, grab our 2-point rectangle, and we'll just go ahead and click on the origin just so we know that we're starting there. And as you can see, when you drag it, and I'm not like pressing, I'm not clicking or anything, I'm just dragging this here without clicking on anything, you can see that the dimensions will change as you drag it out. You can also just type them in, or you can manually kind of bring them to what you want. It's not super hard with the rectangle that we're trying to draw, but you can also just go ahead. You can see that the vertical dimension here is highlighted. I know I want this to be 1.5 inches, and then I can click the tab to change the other dimension. We know we want that at 3.5. Click enter and lock that in. So now we've got our rectangle and our sketch is defined. If we look at our object here, we know that we're also going to want a circular feature in the middle of this rectangle. So we're just going to do that here. We're going to draw a circle in the middle of that rectangle. We need a center diameter circle because we also know that we want it to be 0.75 inches in diameter. So let's go ahead, draw this 0.75, and there we go, our center diameter circle. You'll also notice I can still move this around if I click on it, and I can put it wherever I want. This is because the sketch is undefined. So we've kind of moved it towards the center, but Fusion doesn't know that we want it really locked in to that point. So we need to make sure that we're adding another dimension that shows, yeah, we know how big this circle is, but we don't know where it is. So we need to make sure that we know this circle is in the middle of this line and in the middle of this line. You can do that in a couple ways. I will show you both of them. The first is through constraints. We're going to take a horizontal, vertical constraint, and we need to say we want this circle's midpoint to be in the midpoint of this line, this vertical line. Where is the midpoint of this line? You can actually hover over it with the horizontal vertical constraint and hold down Shift. And as you do, you will see this icon come up. That's this X with the triangle. That is the midpoint. So as long as you're holding down Shift, you'll be able to find the midpoint. Click on it, and there we go. Now Fusion knows the midpoint of this circle is exactly in the middle of this line. You can do the exact same with the other line. Midpoint of the circle, hold down Shift, midpoint of the line, and there we go. Our circle locked into the center. It's on this line here, as well as this line here. How else can we do this? Let's just undo a couple times here, get rid of some constraints. So constraints is just one way. You can also use dimensions. So Dimensioning for something like this is easier if you know exactly what those dimensions are. And we do. We know that the midpoint of this line, because this entire line is 3.5 inches, we know the midpoint is going to be about 1.75 inches. And for here, we know it's going to be 0.75 inches. So we can just add those dimensions manually. To do that, you can come over to Create and click Sketch Dimension, or hit D on your keyboard, and then you will be in the Dimensions section. So let's go ahead and select our circle here, the midpoint of our circle, and this line. We know that this, what we need it to be, is halfway from 0 to 3.5 inches, which is 1.75 inches. We've specified this dimension, and now we can do the same thing with our other line. The distance from here to here is going to be 0.75 inches. And there we go. Perfect. Now everything is locked. We can see the red lock symbol. Everything's defined. We know where this circle is and how big it is. We know where this rectangle is and how big it is. Something that you can ask yourself if you're kind of running into issues with your sketches not being defined is, do we know how big it is and where it is? Those are kind of the two things that Fusion needs to say that your sketch is defined. So we've got our first part. We can see here, this is kind of what we're aiming for. This is the first part. So we have that, and we can move on now to creating this into like a 3D part instead of our 2D sketch. Oh, one other thing to mention is make sure your sketches are always expanded, like this menu over here on the side. You want to make sure that this arrow is always down so that you can see your sketches as you're making your parts. So let's go ahead and finish our sketch. It's completely two-dimensional here, which obviously we want to turn this into like a rectangular prism with a hole through it. So let's do that. One of the most important tools that you'll use quite a lot is Extrude, which you can access up here or by pressing E on your keyboard. Now what we want is we want this to be a hole through the middle. Now the good news is, because the circle was sketched like on top of this rectangle, they are two different faces, and Fusion is going to treat them as such. So if you wanted to extrude both of them, when you have the extrude menu up, you can see that, you know, it's asking us to select what profiles we want. This is a profile. This is also a profile. So if you want them both, then you can select them both. If you don't, then you can just select this outside one. Gives you a couple of settings here, where you start, what direction you're going in, you know, if you wanted it to be symmetrical or something like that. And you can also just type the distance you want it extruded in right here, or you can use this arrow and drag it with you. So we want it to be 1.5 inches, I think. So I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And now we've got our makings of this part here. Let's just check that I'm at the right place. Oh, it wants a 0.75. Let's do it exactly so that we're here. So let's make sure that we do that exactly. So 0.75 inches. There we go. Perfect. So now we've followed the it is 1.5. It's just symmetric. So you can so you can do this in any way. Wow, I do this every semester and yet I still can't. So it is 1.5 inches, but if you make it symmetric here, which we will do, 0.75 inches on both sides is what this is going to turn into, which is obviously 1.5 inches. It doesn't really matter. So there we go. There's our box. We have done a great job. Next step here is going to be to make, you'll notice that in our part, the box here has rounded edges. That is through a tool called Fillet, which can make our edges rounded. up here, you can find it. It's pretty easy to access, F on the keyboard. And we want a fillet on all of these faces and features. Is that what we want here? So we want the 4 faces around to be filleted. So let's go ahead and select them. Select 1 face, select 2. Let's go ahead and rotate this. Select face number 3 and select our 4th face. And we want it to be 0.1 inch fillet, which again, you can just, you can like use this arrow and do it. Or you can type it in here. We want it to be 0.1. Sorry, my cat just got in front of my keyboard, so now I can't see it anymore. 0.1. Perfect. Now our box has some nice rounded edges, makes it look pretty. This slide just shows that we can also, you know, make multiple fillets for different faces, if that's what we want to do. You can play around with fillet on your own. Next step, make sure your sketches are defined. Next step, we're going to want to make this feature that's on the top. So this top part here, we're going to want to make. And you'll notice that it comes out right from the top of this box. So what you can do if you want to create a feature that's connected to this part, then when you create a sketch and it asks you to pick the plane that you're sketching on, you can actually just pick this face. So I'm going to do that. And now instead of sketching just on this plane wildly, we are sketching directly on the face of this already created box. So once again, we want our feature to be like a cylindrical type feature. So we're going to draw 2 circles. One of them is going to be 0.5 inch in diameter. One of them is going to be 1 inch in diameter. And once again, they are right in the middle. So let's do that. Let's create a 1 inch diameter circle. We will go ahead and constrain it here to the midpoint. Constrain it again to this midpoint. Fully defined circle. Let's go ahead and make our next circle. 0.5 inches in diameter. And you will notice here that because I selected the midpoint of that first circle, which was already defined, this circle also just comes out as being already defined. So you don't have to do like the midpoint things again. If you don't do that, if you put both circles to then define them both manually, that's also totally fine. But now we've got our kind of cylindrical feature here. And once again, because we kind of have 2 different profiles, you can see me hovering over them, we kind of just want this outside one to be extruded. So let's do that. 0.5 inches upward. Pretty sure looks right to me. It's a fake part, so it doesn't really matter. So yeah, at this point, we have our feature. Okay, the last part here that we need to create is we've got a square hole as well on the side. Once again, our square hole can be done by creating a simple sketch, but this time on one of the side faces. Let's go ahead and pick that. We can create a center rectangle this time because we know that it's going to be like in the center. And how big was this again? 0.5 by 0.5. Perfect. So let's put it close to the center, 0.5 by 0.5. You see again, it's not defined because we need to do our midpoint constraints here. Let's do it again on this line, and there we go. Finish our sketch. And we need to extrude it in this time. If you extrude it through an object, it will create like an indent. It will create a hole and cut it out instead of like make it bigger and make it 3-dimensional. Even if you like pull this way out, it'll still just cut through. this part, so it doesn't really matter. So let's see. If we go to a right side view, we can see that it's cut all the way through. There we go. The last thing that we want to do at this point is, what if we wanted this feature on the top to also be replicated on the bottom? We also wanted that exact feature to be down here. Yeah, we could sketch it again on the bottom, do the exact same thing, but there is an easier way. Instead, we are going to mirror our feature up here. So I also have a cat sitting directly in front of me, kind of sitting on my keyboard. Wait, can I like move the tripod enough that you can see her? Kind of. Anyway, you can see how so important this is to me. All right, so let's mirror this feature. Now, if we wanted this feature on the top to be replicated on the exact bottom here, we need to make sure that we are mirroring across the midplane of this object, right? Because we don't just want this to mirror upside down and then go inside of this object. We want it to appear on the bottom, which means that we need to factor the distance between this circle here and this kind of mid-center line plane of this object into our mirror. So what you need to do if you want to mirror like a feature, you know, across an entire object or something like that, is we first need to construct a plane, because this isn't the origin plane that we're mirroring across. If we did that, then it would factor in the distance between the origin and this object, and then the this object on the top would kind of appear underneath like the entire object and wouldn't be connected to it. So we need to make a plane that cuts through the middle of our object here. And then we have this construct feature where you can make planes. So we've got, you know, offset planes, angled planes. We also have mid planes here, which we're going to want to construct a plane that appears, oh, it's this slide, a plane that appears in the middle of this object, right? So we can use a midplane. Let's construct a midplane. We want to construct it on we want to construct it we want to construct it between here and rotate it and here. There we go. So what I just did was I selected this top face and then I selected the bottom face so that it knows it's creating a midplane in the middle of here and here. So it's going to be in the middle of this object. Click OK. Now we have this plane. Great. It's not really anything. It's not like an object. It's just a plane that we can use to construct the objects that we want. So let's go ahead and mirror this feature across this plane. You can access that through Create, and Mirror is down here in Create. Click Mirror, and you can choose different things that you want to mirror. So because this is all connected, it's considered one body, but with different features. So we want to make sure that we have selected features here. We only want to mirror the feature. We don't want to mirror the entire body of this object, because if we did do that, then it would just be like the entire thing. So this top part here is a feature. If you hover over things, it'll show you like, you know, what the different features are. But I just want this kind of top cylindrical object. It tells me now, get away from me, AI assistant. Leave me alone. I've selected this object that I want to mirror. Now I can select the mirror plane, which is this plane that we've constructed, and then click OK. And there it is on the bottom. Let's rotate it so we can see. There it is. It has mirrored itself across this plane. Perfect. So now we've got our object, and I'm pretty sure that was everything that it was supposed to do in this object. Okay, perfect. So now we have our object fully constructed. Our last and final step is going to be, we want to make this look like something. For a lot of your stuff, you're not necessarily going to be like printing it out, or you want to use a CAD model to demonstrate what a design would look like if it were physical. So adding adding appearances is very important. So if you select A on your keyboard, or in here in Modify, you will access the Appearance menu. Now I might mess this up a little bit because it's so easy to not remember exactly what you're supposed to be clicking. But you can see this library here of different types of appearances, and you might have to like download them. It's, you know, then you just kind of have them in your library inbox. But let's say we want this to be wooden. We want it to be mahogany wood. Let's just go ahead and download that mahogany wood. If you go ahead and drag it up here, now we have mahogany wood as an option for this design, and then I can just drag it onto my device. So it took me like a really long time to figure out how to actually apply the appearance. It's because you have to drag it. You can also make it different. So if we wanted it to be on this entire body, like the whole thing is wood, great. But if you just wanted it on specific faces, then you can drag, you know, the steel appearance to the faces that you want that on. So you can make it look, you know, pretty interesting and fun, and actually look like what it is that you're trying to make. So this is now what this looks like. We've got some wood on it, you know, some steel on it. It's looking pretty fresh. So there we go. That's everything for this walkthrough. Hopefully it was helpful.